Hi, I'm Doris Dean. Welcome to Carib Nation. I'm on location in Sandy Spring, Maryland, at the site of the Sandy Spring Slave Museum. And we're going to take you on a tour through this museum so that you can get a vivid recollection and a great representation of some of the stages through our history.
When America wants to know what's happening in the Caribbean diaspora, there is one clear choice.
Hello, welcome to Carib Nation.
Both people inside and outside are
Very excited about today's program.
Looking at you, I can tell that you have traveled the journey.
One television organization brings America close to the people, stories, and events that affects Caribbean life. Get close, get answers, get Carib Nation.
Good morning, Dr. Anderson.
Morning. Welcome to the Slave Museum.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Morning. So you have entered what we call the Great Hall. So you're at the entrance, the rez-de-chaussée. And this is a mural that was done by a high school art teacher. And it depicts a slave auction, perhaps in Alexandria, or perhaps in some place in Baltimore.
So that's the
That's
slave.
That's the slave. It's called. He called this art piece here 2 for 1 because she's pregnant, and he believes that
they get
depicts
two. I see.
it depicts the real situation in the slave auction. So we enter into the main hall, and we see here some carvings that I spent about a year doing, learning how to carve in Honduran mahogany and
So
African
this is
mahogany.
your own handwork.
Right.
Wow.
Took about a year. And what it does, it depicts what we call Black progress. It shows here the Africans in their huts living this nice, comfortable pastoral life. Someone came with a Bible and collected them. The next panel demonstrates the ship that transported them to the Indies, and the work that they had to do, everything, washerwomen, digging, planting, doing every menial task possible to make the society survive.
Right.
They have survived here and they have arrived in this panel, and what it shows us is our ladies here, for example, smoking a cigarette, or men with a Mercedes-Benz and Magic Johnson and B.B. King, etc. So these individuals here, they have arrived, moved to the next level. Then this is perhaps somebody like myself over here. This fellow thinks he has arrived. He has a diploma in his hand. He has nice socks and pointed shoes. But yet still there are lots of hands reaching for his neck. And his body says, "Oh, what have I done? I thought that I made it with a degree and everything was fine." But right next to him are some of his brothers in jail, as we see right here. Across here is the same idea, but it just shows shows slaves in transit. And around this hall, you just have African fetishes from the Congo and from Nigeria. And art that was donated by a family named Gaines to the museum. It's depicting the family. And the family. And above it is something we got from Jamaica. It's an old oil lamp, came from Greencastle in Clarendon, an old estate there. So we simply electrified it and painted it up and cleaned it up and so on. And so we had a
Beautiful piece of work.
Yes. And in the 1800s. Yeah. Over here we have slave documents, manumission papers, and I think we have the best collection of original slave documents in the area. And it inventories of slaves, their names, how much they cost, that sort of a thing. And behind it, of course, we have the old Spanish jar, which as kids we always thought had money, and so we used to break them up. And I guess I later learned their value.
Yeah,
So that's here. This room is just culture, and it is depicting art and culture from the diaspora. Here, for example, we have an old Igbo piece. It's about 150 to 200 years old, a piece from Igbo land in Nigeria. More jars, water jars, we used to call them monkey jars in the West Indies. Chairs and beaded chairs from the Yoruba, voodoo dolls from the Yoruba, and clothing, articles of clothing from the entire diaspora.
And the tapestries.
The tapestry from the Congo.
How long ago did you start doing
The museum started in 1988. But of course, it was an expensive venture, so it took a long time to get this building together. This building started in 1999, and still not complete, but it's almost complete.
Wow.
But we started with the middle passage display, the Clipper ship.
Right.
Right. This room is named after Stanley Johnson, and it's the Civil Rights and Slavery Room. Stanley Johnson is an electrician whose family has been here for over 200 years.
in this area?
In this area. And he did all the work here for nothing.
How many hours a day would you say you put in here? You've also been working at Howard,
Yes,
Professor
yes,
Howard.
yes.
How many hours a day have you been able to put in?
I'm fortunate in that I can spend my mornings here. And so my mother and I come here every day from, say, 9 o'clock until 12 o'clock. Then I have to rush to work. And then, of course, I have to work later.
Yes, to make up that time.
So 8, 9 o'clock is when I'm coming home from work. But I've just been fortunate with that kind of a schedule.
Yeah.
So here, the entire room is centered around this gravestone. It came from Greencastle in Trelawney. And it says, "To the memory of Eve, an honest, faithful, and obedient slave, by her affectionate and grateful master, Henry Shirley, 1800. And we dug it up from this part of the world.
Really?
From Trelawney. Brought it here. It's of soapstone, and so you can't even clean it.
Yes, you can.
But you can read it quite clearly here. As I mentioned, we have lots of slave documents. And these slave documents are slave documents depicting slavery in Maryland. And again, manumission papers and inventories and any interesting documents. We have, of course, the famous colored segregation signs all along here. And this was very important to us, simply because I sort of grew up at the time in the 60s, and matured in the 60s, you know, going to school with people like Stoker Carmichael and attending protest movements and civil rights movements in Greensboro and in Wilmington, North Carolina.
This is very meaningful.
It's very meaningful to me because we saw these signs right here in Maryland at the time. Over here we have a very interesting book. Take a look at it. It's written by a fellow named Charles Carroll of Carrollton. He was the largest slave owner in Maryland. and is also a sign of the Declaration of Independence. His book is entitled The Negro a Beast in the Image of God, where he used the Bible to justify slavery all along here. So that's very interesting, rare book.
Yes, yes.
And that corner we have, of course, that over here is they owned you. Over here is they hated you.
Oh.
And so we have our KKK outfits over here. And so we
started young.
Yes. So we have shackles of different types. Those that would tether the slaves, and these are all original. That would tether the slaves to the wall, foot shackles, neck shackles, shackles that are rattlers.
I don't think most people knew there was such a wide variety.
Oh yes, and different sizes.
Yes.
And those with the original keys that you have here, for example,
yeah.
they work.
They still do.
They still work. Over here we have the famous crab shackle. So the slave would go through the bushes. But the slaves got smart. They started putting clay inside here, and then you couldn't hear the rattle after a while. And the one that I'm most proud of course, is this one. This one came out of Trelawney again, and you can see here a description of it in Harper's Magazine, Maryland.
So this is information that you had learned along the way and knew your history, having been interested in reading.
Exactly, read the chronicles. So individuals here were freed long before everybody else, and they were able to purchase land, and they were donated land by their Quaker, let's say masters, but they're not owners, but supervisors.
Yeah.
And so you have families here for over 200 years living in this area, Holly Grove and so forth. This became the center of the Underground Railroad, one of the major stations. And some of the Thomas families, for example, immigrated via the Underground Railroad to Canada, and they established villages and townships in Canada. And so we don't have any physical evidence of the Underground Railroad, but we have the bloodline. Because they come back every year, people from Canada. And the folks here with huge family reunions. And that's really the power of this area. So this we decided to look at achievement, because many of the inventions and so forth, they were not patentable, rather time. We started out with education. And I don't know if you remember, but I remember sitting on benches like these behind a blackboard underneath a tree, for example. And of course, the educational system evolved, and so blacks had better chairs with inkwells and so on. And of course, we remember the use of slates along here. So this is, to me, my favorite photograph right here. That poor lady teaching her child how to read and write on the ABCs. She's getting it wrong, but she's still teaching them how to read.
Trying her best.
Right. And so what we did is we have these pictures without titles. And we want the students, as they pass through, black, white, whoever passes through here, to look at these pictures and try to identify.
That would be a great exercise.
Exactly. We're proud of this little corner. This little corner because it says from slave ship to spaceship. And we have Mae Jemison and officers, and of course the crew that just died along here. But it also depicts a Newsweek article during the search of Adam and Eve and the origin of man. And where the anthropologists show that man originated here in East Africa, and then they migrated through South Africa into Europe for a while, and throughout the entire southern part of the globe over here, into China and so forth, and into Australia. So those ideas here, one tree, one people. This is the hall named after the Snowden Offord Hall, and it's of the community, telling about the achievements in the community and so forth, and their history. What's very interesting is that here one looks at the achievements of one family's legacy. And they drew a tree, and the tree goes all the way back. But I have a little surprise for you. And it's a wonderful cabinet you see on this wall. But if I pull this cabinet away, you see that? You see
Oh. Oh.
that? Underground Railroad.
Wow.
You see? The
That's a
slaver
surprise.
the slaver would come and he would think that you just had a cabinet against the wall, but behind the walls or in the ground or in the floor, underneath the floorboards and so on, you had the slaves hidden along here.
Oh my goodness.
This is where the community comes, the Wesleyan Fellowship.
Oh, Wesleyan.
The average age, I think, of the people who come here every Sunday at 10:30 until 12, probably 80 years old. You know, all the way from 60s to 87s, 88s.
From the community.
From the community.
How large is the community?
We can't just think of it just as the Sandy Spring community, because they come from Gaithersburg and from Holly Grove and from Round Oak and from Cincinnati, all the local areas around here. They come here to church.
Happening in the Caribbean diaspora, there is one clear choice.
Hello, welcome to Carib Nation.
Both people inside and outside are very excited about today's program.
Looking at you, I can tell that you have traveled the journey.
One television organization brings America close to the people, stories and events that affects Caribbean life. Get close, get answers, get Carib Nation.
This is where it all started.
Where it all started.
Which did you start first?
We started the cross-section of the clipper ship. And we used the clipper ship built to scale. And so it's just a section through it. And the clipper ship were those ships built after 1865, after they abolished slavery. But in 1865, these rich New Englanders and Baltimoreans built these types of clipper ships that were largely involved in the East Africa slave trade. And so they were fast, worked with the trade winds, go towards scale and so on. Each deck is about 4 feet high. And the slaves, of course, were not arranged in these sardine-type packages like you see with the big galleons, you know, the big huge ships. So this ship probably carried about 300 slaves. This size, 300 slaves. And it was, they would transport them, mostly, they use the trade winds, and they go north along the east coast of Africa, collecting slaves and transporting slaves to places like Eritrea, and not Eritrea, but Saudi Arabia and Yemen and so forth. I guess that's why Prince Bandar has hair like ours, you know, and not like his alleged ancestors. So, so they dumped slaves there and in Zanzibar and so forth. Then they would go up and down the coast and they would collect slaves. And they'd go all the way down by the Cape of Good Hope and swing all the way to Brazil until 1890. So we had lots of activity on the East Coast. You only think of the West Coast Middle Passage, but the East Coast Middle Passage was just as active. It lasted long after 1865.
It's been a pleasure.
Come
I
back.
really enjoyed them.
You know, it's a little bit of the West Indies and the
Africa,
Caribbean and
everywhere.
Africa and Europe and everything.
And there's a lot to learn, and I hope that we keep progress, keep watching the progress.
Sure. And thanks to Larry too for all his assistance and his producing abilities.